Om Shanti and welcome back to an all-new series of Light of Knowledge International. This time too, we bring to you several speakers from around the globe, experienced Rajyoga meditation practitioners and teachers. They will share their knowledge with us and in addition also bring their unique experiences to the discussions. Our topic of discussion today is finding and knowing God. God, a powerful entity as we will all agree. Someone who protects us, guides us, helps us, loves us. Unfortunately, under the name of religion, we say, your God is different from my God, or my God is superior to your God. So do we really understand God? To help us understand God and know His functions, His role, we have with us a very special guest today in our Godlywood studio, Sister Maureen Chen from Sydney, Australia. Sister Maureen has been a Rajyoga teacher and practitioner for the past 40 years. And of these 40 years, she has spent 30 years in Asia, in different countries, such as Hong Kong, Philippines. In these countries, Sister has initiated several projects, and one of the major projects which she has initiated is called KILT in Cambodia. This project takes care of landmine victims. Another project called Food Link in Hong Kong brings surplus food from restaurants to the needy. In India, Sister has been involved in a project called The Future of Power. Sister was back in Sydney, Australia for the past 4 years, but her heart's calling was to come back to Asia. So currently, Sister is in Taiwan and she's establishing a Rajyoga Meditation Center of Brahmakumaris in Taiwan. So let's all welcome Sister. Om Shanti, Sister, and welcome to the show.
Om Shanti, very nice to be here.
We are so glad to have you here with us, and in spite of your busy schedule, you've taken time to come and talk to us, and we really appreciate that. Sister Maureen, like I said, our topic for today is finding and knowing God. And before I go into asking you who God is, what God is, one question that someone had was, that's what I'd like to start off with. I am having a great life, a wonderful life. Do I need God in my life? That was the question.
That's a very good question. Actually, people have such a misunderstanding of God, as you mentioned, and I didn't think I needed God because I was young. I started my journey with the Brahmakumaris when I was 21. Before that, I was practicing Buddhist meditation.
Oh, okay.
And I thought God is just a crutch. It's just for weak people. I don't need God. And I didn't have any interest in finding God.
Isn't that something? Because when you grow up in India, you grow up with the notion of God, in most families, I should say. And to have that feeling that I don't need God in my life, was that because you were pretty much self-sufficient with all your needs? And
actually, the main reason was I didn't believe what they said about God.
Okay.
I couldn't believe that God created this world because I saw mostly sorrow with a little bit of happiness. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't believe that God makes people happy, He makes them sad, that everything is His will.
But that is the notion out there today. People say that everything that happens in my life, good and bad, is a will of God. So is that not the right notion?
Actually, the thing I was looking for was an understanding of suffering.
Okay.
And when I came across the philosophy of karma, it really was such a big thing for me. I wanted to, go to Indonesia, which is where I first heard about it because they have Hindus there. So I wanted to really go into the depth of this philosophy of karma because according to that philosophy, we create our own situation. It's not that God is making someone born happy and well and in a great family and another one born with a disability in poverty. It just seemed so unfair to me. So I had no interest in the God that I was introduced to.
Okay, so other than suffering, what could be a motivation for that person who I just mentioned, who said he does not need God in his life? Do you think at some point in time, each one of us has that inner desire to ultimately find God?
I think if I could say I need God, if I could say that, because I practiced with the Buddhist meditation for a few years, but I didn't really change. And when I came across this practice and started to connect, I just found I could change very easily, naturally, and it was all based on love.
That's wonderful. You just mentioned two important aspects. One is connection and one is love. Let's take the connection aspect. To me, God is someone up there, vibrating on a completely high frequency, and I'm down here. In that case, how would you connect with someone who's totally way beyond my reach?
Well, that's also what I really appreciated with these teachings, because what we understand is all of us are souls in bodies, and there's one soul that never takes a body. And that is the only difference, because a soul is a being of love and peace and wisdom and power. So I actually can connect and realize and experience who I am through that connection with God.
Sister, in order to connect, though, we need an introduction to God. Because when we connect with a person, for example, they tell us this is his name, this is where he comes from. So in order to connect to God, I guess we need to know his name and where he lives and what he does.
It helps, but for me, when I did the course in Rajyoga, which I was a bit resistant to do because I saw that word God in the leaflet, but when I did eventually go to the center, I followed the guided meditation that was spoken, and I experienced everything. I experienced that love and bliss and happiness, and I thought, where is this coming from? I have never experienced anything like this, and it really felt like it was from another source. So even though I intellectually didn't want to believe in God, I was hooked on the experience level.
Wow, that is interesting. But for the sake of our viewers, because in India, different religions or different sects within a religion have different names for God. Is there any one particular name that you refer to?
In the Brahmakumaris, they use the name Shiva.
Okay.
But I don't think we should get too stuck with names, because that often divides. In fact, I was wishing that there was a word for God, a name for God that could unite us all, because if we say Allah, immediately we think Muslim. If we say Shiva, we think Hindu. If we say God, we usually think Christian. So I do wish there was a word, a name that didn't bring those labels into it. But the word Shiva, the name Shiva, is actually very apt because it means the point and the world benefactor. So these are very descriptive of who God is.
Right. A point and a world benefactor. And where does he live? I mean, normally we point up there. Like if you ask someone, where is God? They will point up there. So does he have like a place, like we have a home? Does he have a place he lives?
Yeah, I think this is the point, that we all took bodies on this, in this dimension. But God didn't take a body. So God is in that param dham, that abode beyond. And that's what I like to think of as God's name too. Param Atma, because we're not param, we are here. So the fact that there's one being beyond, that I think says it all.
Paramatma, yeah, that's wonderful.
And that was the origins of Raj Yoga, the connection between Atma and Paramatma. So that's the essence of Raj Yoga.
That's another interesting factor when you say Atma and Paramatma. In India, like sages and saints have spent years with the question, who am I? And here it sounds like the very first introduction that you get is about the soul, like I'm a soul. How did that sit with you?
Yeah, that was very impactful because the idea that my original nature is peaceful and loving. I don't have to become peaceful. I don't have to become loving. I just have to remember who I am. So that makes the whole thing a lot easier. And when we start with that thought, I am a being of peace, then we can experience it. And only if we experience, we know the truth of it.
Okay. Going back to the word connection, when you say, you connected with God, how is it do we establish? Because again, like I said, you just mentioned that he's a dot. How do I connect with the dot? I mean, if I see a picture of a person, it's easier to connect to the person. And I'm not able to see him with my physical eyes. And he's up there. So how do I connect with him?
That's also what I appreciate, because the main teaching in the Brahma Kumaris Rajyoga is not to have any image.
Okay.
Because as if we have an image in front of us, we are aware of our image. And that is what we call body conscious. So to connect with a being that has no physical form, that I think is one of the most impactful experiences, because then I go beyond my form. And I need to go beyond my form to be soul conscious. So it's all very well to have gurus and teachers, and I think they give great teachings, but I would not connect with them. I would take their teachings to help me connect with the divine.
Actually, you made a very interesting point, because in my earlier days, when I was looking for God, I was under the impression that, just like when you want to buy a house, you need a realtor. Or when you have to go to another country, you need a travel agent, for your visa. I was under the impression that I needed an intermediary to connect to God, because being young, I was not aware of my capabilities that I could connect directly. Is that a right assumption, that we don't need an intermediary?
Yeah, and I think that's what I was really drawn to as well, because I think no human being is perfect, and we've seen that so many people have put their whole faith in a human being and been so disappointed. So, I think to be able to go to that one that will be constant, that's the other name I like, Sadashiv, the one that's constantly Shiva. So to go to that source that is constant is a protection, really, because any human being can let us down.
True, very true. But how do I establish this connection with him? I mean, is there any way that is taught at Brahmakumaris, or are there any guidelines that we're given to just connect to him?
Yeah, I think the idea, starting with the idea that I am not this body. I'm a spiritual being, separate to this body, and on the wings of my thought, I can travel beyond. So I can take my thoughts beyond all that's physical and connect with that being that is beyond. And when I connect with that being, I can experience myself almost like being aligned with that energy. And that's where I feel myself. I experience myself as a being of peace and love and bliss and wisdom.
But is that something that happened to you right away, as you mentioned? But for most of us, it could take time, because we are so much into our worldly desires and our name, fame, family. Do we have to be at a certain level? It could be a yearning from within, probably what takes you there. But do we need to be at a certain level in order to even attempt this process?
I think there's two aspects here. One is grace, and the other is effort. So I'm not sure what my experience was, because I was quite intent on knowing truth and understanding how to alleviate suffering. So I was quite intent on that. I traveled to India. I studied, Buddhism, visited ashrams here. So I think in that sense, maybe I earned it in a way, but with relationship to God, I had no interest, it wasn't on my agenda. So it was a bit of a grace that I had that experience on the second lesson of doing the meditation course. So that was grace.
It's very well said, because grace and self-effort. Would you say they're 50-50, or how would you?
I think we can't depend on grace.
Okay.
I think it's up to us to make the effort, and grace is kind of a bit lucky in a way, because we never know when we're going to experience that grace. But we need to be open to it.
Right. And you just mentioned about the karmic accounts, so maybe it's something from the past.
That's what I wonder. That maybe I had this connection before, so it was so easy.
Exactly.
Because from this birth, I couldn't see why I got that experience.
Exactly. Because, I do believe in karmic philosophy, and from what you're saying, it totally seems to me like it has to be some connection from the past. Because this was a wonderful experience that you had, like you said, within, a couple of days.
Yeah, 2 days, the second lesson.
Yeah.
And that too, when they first mentioned God in the second lesson, I thought, oh no, here it goes. And I wanted to go out. And yet when we did the meditation, I experienced it.
That's what's wonderful about this Rajyoga meditation, in my experience as well, where a lot of questions, unanswered questions. Rajyoga meditation practices gives you all these answers, I can say. I can underline all and say it gives you almost all these answers.
Yeah.
Did you see God in any particular relationship, or was it just the Supreme Being, or were you able to establish a relationship with Him?
I think friend was probably the first and foremost, because I didn't like the idea of God sitting up there judging and got a big book and, going to, punish you for all the sins that you commit. So I liked that God was a bit more on my level. So I liked that friendship. But then beloved has been a very strong experience in my life. I do feel God as a beloved.
That's very nice. Sister, you just mentioned the word beloved, God as your beloved. And in the Indian scriptures, you read about the gopis and the gopis. And again, you read about these things not realizing that you could be a gop or a gopi. For you, when you read about it, it's like, okay, it's someone out there or some special people, who can consider God as your beloved. But when you do get to that stage where you start calling God as your beloved, how does that impact your life?
I lived in Hong Kong for over 20 years. I had no friends or family. People come to the center, whoever comes. They're not necessarily your choice, but I never felt lonely. Never, ever. And I never felt that I needed someone to depend on someone. So I really experienced God as being the one that loves me and supports me and is there for me. It was a very real experience. And at one point, I even got overwhelmed for a while. For a few days, I was overwhelmed by this love. It was like my heart was almost like it was being stretched, almost a bit of pain in my heart because I had to let more love in. So I've really experienced God as the beloved.
Wow. I mean, that sounds like a great experience. But again, not all of us can experience that to that extent. Is there a practice, or is there anything that we can do to work on this relationship?
Actually, recently I had a meditation. We have this expression, drop dead beautiful. Have you heard of that?
Yes.
It's like you just drop dead this
you're just
person,
gorgeous.
so beautiful. Yeah. And I had that thought come up in my meditation that God is drop dead beautiful. And then I thought, no, you can't even use that word. And every word I tried to use, God was beyond that, greater than that. I wasn't able to put any limit on this amazing being. And I just experienced my love level increasing because, you know, I was trying to think drop dead present, drop dead everything. I couldn't put a word. And that, I think, is the experience of God that is beyond anything we can possibly imagine. And for that also, because of that, you know, I didn't get attracted by people because they're just like a candle in front of the sun. You couldn't compare a human being with God. So why would I be attracted to a human being when I know God that's so much beyond and so much greater? So I like the mystics. You know, there's all traditions have the mystics like Rumi, St. Francis of Assisi. I love the mystical aspect of connecting with God, knowing God, because it's all about experience, not believing. Believing is very mundane, I think.
So when we go beyond believing and put ourselves in a situation where we just, maybe like you said earlier, you used the word body consciousness. If we can step out of that, then maybe we can start connecting dot to dot.
Dot to dot, yeah.
Didi, we should explore more of this soul to soul, dot to dot connection, because I know there is a lot more that we can get from you. So unfortunately, it's time for this episode, and we'd like to conclude this episode, but we look forward to seeing you again for our next episode.
Wonderful. Yes, I'd like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Today, we got a little bit of introduction from Sister Maureen about God and how beautifully and instantly she connected with God. Two important aspects of her connection with God was the suffering that pulled her to God, and also she's able to connect with God as her beloved. And how beautiful is that? We will continue this discussion in our next episode. So until then, take care and Om Shanti.